Welcome to Generations. My name is Beverly Crosby. Today, our topic is Your Words Matter. Have you ever said something or committed to something and you thought, that's not what I meant? Well, today our co-hosts are going to have a panel discussion talking about choosing your words carefully. So with that, let's get started. Hello, everyone. It's good to see everybody this month. It feels like it's been a long time. Gloria, how have you been?
I've been great. I've been waiting for warm weather to plant flowers. So I'm enjoying this. Thank you.
And Bob, good to see you today.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's finally nice to get outdoors and do things, play some golf or whatever.
And Midge, how have you been? You had knee surgery a while back. How are you doing?
Oh, it gets better all the time. So I'm right on track, the doctor said. So I can get out and walk, which makes me feel good. I just love to be outside.
And we've asked Nadia to join us today because she's got a special little piece that she wants to tell us about. I think it's going to be really fun and interesting. So welcome, Nadia.
Thank you, Beverly. I would ordinarily be outside walking. I'll do it later today. I am really happy to be here.
Very good. And David Lapaco, I am so happy you joined us. And for the audience sake, David is an associate professor at Augsburg University in the communications department. So being that our topic is Your Words Matter, we're going to draw on David's expertise today and hoping that he can give us a few tips about how we use our words. So welcome, David.
Well, thank you very much. I'm really curious about what Nadia has, but I'll have to set that aside for the moment. Nice to be here. I think communication is an interesting and kind of tricky subject to talk about always. Some of the concepts are really simple to understand, but then converting them to your actual behavior is a whole separate thing. So it's one thing to know about what's going on, but then to actually change your behavior in a way that will enable you to be more effective as a communicator. That's, to me, as big a challenge as understanding what's going on.
And I don't think we ever completely learn, do we? I mean, we can keep on trying, but there's so many times what happens is somebody will say something and it catches us at a moment that we're not expecting to hear what they're saying. And sometimes we can feel kind of stuck or trapped or, so those are the types of things we're going to talk about today. How do we get out of those situations? What can we say differently, or what could have we said differently? So with that, let me give you a first example of one of my experiences, and maybe you can all shed some light on it for me. I, of course, am a producer for television and websites and video work. And I had someone who was at an event with me, and that person said, "Oh, Beverly can do that." And some of you probably have had people say that, "Oh, Gloria's good at this." Well, anyway, this person said, "Oh, Beverly can do it. And, I'll pay her for, a couple of days of work." And I'm just thinking, what? Couple of days? That's going to take me a month to do. And the other people that he was referring to, they were so excited. Like, "Oh, that'd be wonderful. Oh my goodness. Oh, and they were just like over the top, and they go, "Let's go to lunch. Let's talk about this." And, it was like a runaway cart. I couldn't catch up. I couldn't stop it. I didn't know how to stop it at that point because it was for a good cause as well. And they were all so excited. And I didn't want to make the person who offered seem like, put that person in an awkward position either. So, but every so often somebody they offer, or, "Oh, she'll do it. I'll do a favor for somebody at a little bit of price, and then they'll tell somebody else, oh yeah, she does it cheap. She'll do it at this
Yeah.
price. So anyway, what I did real quick here to wrap that up is that, I knew that the ladies on the other end couldn't afford any more money. So, I couldn't ask them really. And then, so afterwards I had a long talk with a person who offered, and we settled on another amount, not near as much as, I thought I should get anyway, but still. And I just said, please don't ever do that again. Always talk to me first. But what do you do with something like that? Anybody?
I don't know. I think with my growing age, I am getting better at saying no. I don't have the time for that commitment. When I was younger, I might have been caught up in that kind of thing, being flattered, that they wanted me, and then you realize that it's way too much. So,
Well, Bev, at least you were willing to talk about it. I can't tell you how many times a student has come into my office and they think I'm a therapist or something, which I'm not really, but they'll unburden their souls, talk about all these problems they're having with another individual. And then my first question is always, what do you suppose?
have you
What did
talked
you
to
say
them?
to them?
You talk to this person about that, and
Right.
90% of the time or more, the answer is, well, no, I haven't. So
Yes.
the first step is typically to engage with the other person. Now, one conflict management option you always have is just to let it go. But that doesn't leave you where you want to be typically, or you can just cave into the other person and do what they want, but that leaves you feeling resentful and like you're a loser. You can be more of a shark and say, no, it's my way or the highway. Here's how this needs to happen, but then they're going to feel
Yeah.
as if they're being victimized. You can try to compromise and find a middle ground, which is apparently part of what you did in this situation. Or usually the literature celebrates, not that it's always the best thing to do, but we usually call it a win-win game, where you try to find a way for both parties to come out of it feeling like they've won something. And that involves trusting the other person. It involves being willing to find out what the other person really values and what's really important to them, so that you can enable both of you to come out of it as a winner. Maybe in your case, the amount of pay you were getting was way too low, but there might have been other things that could be put into the negotiations that would enable you to feel like you were at least winning something, maybe like an extended amount of time, maybe future work at a higher rate of pay or something like that. But those are really your options, but it was really good that you actually brought all this stuff up. The other thing, of course, is to own your feelings, which is a very common part of our interpersonal literature, which is you can just say, hey, you're being cheap or you're being unreasonable. But those are fighting words, aren't they?
Yeah.
Then people get defensive. So it's much better to say, if you're in Bev's position, say, I got to tell you, I'm really feeling overwhelmed. And there's so many things I have to do. And many of these things take a lot of time, more than you might imagine. And so I'm just trying to struggle through how to manage this big project. Is there anything you can do to provide some help? And then people would be willing to look at that and say, oh, I didn't realize you needed help. But if you go on the attack and say, I think you are being unreasonable, that's going to set up a dynamic that just doesn't work very well in most interactions.
Absolutely right, David. That was good advice. I too have a communications degree, but I don't do that. I mean, not as advanced as yours, and I'm not doing that now. But I do a lot of speaking in my writing and talking about my books and that sort of thing. And people are really surprised. Oh, you get paid for that? Well, yes, that's what I do. But sometimes I do talk with people, and Midge, you're so right. You get used to that as you get older and more mature. You're more able to let people know this is my fee for such and such. And I write hospice life stories for free. I do that all as a volunteer, but other life stories that I write for people are costly. That takes a tremendous amount of time. And so I do charge for doing other life stories for people. People will come and say, oh, I know you did my friend's story. My friend's father was on hospice and you did this fabulous story for him. I'd like to have one for my father. Well, I'm not going to do your father's for nothing. So we have to talk about it. We have to be able to explain what our feelings are, what our reaction is to their request. We have an inner reaction, but that has to better match our outer reaction. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yes.
So when somebody else, you have an experience that you want to share or a thought?
Nadia, we're waiting for Nadia's.
Okay,
Yeah,
Nadia.
we all want Nadia's. Yeah.
I have a couple of things, but I'll start with one that's really simple, and it's the trap questions. Are you busy tonight? Are you busy
Oh.
Saturday?
Hmm.
What are you doing Saturday? And maybe I'm a little more sensitive to this because I'm an introvert and there's an instant, what am I getting into? I
Yes,
just
yes.
automatically want to run out and do something. I like to plan way ahead to do social things. That's me. That's not the average extrovert. But I do need to say something, and most of the time I just say yes.
Well, for persuasion theory would suggest that what the person is doing is putting you in a place of cognitive dissonance. It's like if I say to you, would you like to save $1,000 a year on your heating bills? You're going to say, well, sure. Well, then I'm going to have a way, a product or a service that will provide that.
It's a
And
trap.
if I ask you, are you busy tonight? And you say no, then if I have something worthwhile to ask you that I think is worthwhile to me, you're going to be in a position where you feel guilty or uncomfortable if you say no. What comes through some of these stories already also, of course, which is part of our discipline, but we don't talk about it a lot, is what I suppose you'd call assertiveness training. And being willing to assert who you are and what your boundaries are and what your limits are. And you can say it in a way which is kind. You don't have to be mean about it, but you can just, as best you can, take care of yourself, because part of communication is taking care of the other person and part of it is taking care of yourself, but you always have that right. And sometimes people, I think, forget that they do have that right. They figure if someone asks them for something that they ought to just say yes. But if you truly in your heart of hearts just can't do it or don't want to do it, I don't think there's anything wrong with that at all. And yes, it is manipulative to ask that kind of question. And they know that instinctively, they know that.
Yeah.
Would it be appropriate when somebody says, "What are you busy tonight?" Would it be appropriate to say, "Why? What do you have in mind?"
Yeah, I think absolutely. It's
You know?
best, there's what we would call meta communication, communicating about how we're communicating. And it would, at this moment, it would be like, so why are you asking me this question? I think there's probably a hidden agenda here, isn't there? And bring it out into the open rather than playing a game about it, because you know what's going on, they know what's going on. And I think by exposing it in that way, it kind of levels the playing field a little bit and doesn't make you feel victimized so much. It's more of an open discussion.
Yeah. Over the years, I've had a lot of people ask me if I know someone. And you can sure get in trouble saying, yeah, blah, this and that about them. But I turn the question around and I ask them, why are you asking me that?
Mm-hmm.
That way, if they're saying, well, I'm going out with this person or we're doing something together, you're going to say something nice, and if they're being treated badly or something, then you'll say, yeah, I've had the same experience, but you can sure put your foot in your mouth if you say something before you find out why they're asking it in the first place.
Yeah.
Of course, in all of these situations, we may have to go through similar types of situations 4 or 5 or 6 times before we finally whack ourselves in the head and say, I need to do this differently. I mean, we're slow learners, and I can't say that I've always had the right response the second time around or the third time around, but given the collective wisdom on this panel, and let's include our viewers too, who probably are demographically a bit older, we have acquired enough experience to be able to know better how to handle some of these situations. And I think that is one of the advantages of increasing age.
That's right. I have an example too that happened to me many years ago when I was just a teenager, and it embarrassed me so badly that ever since I've never forgotten it. And whenever I answer the telephone or I call someone, I say, "This is Gloria." I call someone, even though they may have, it may say on their phone who's calling now, but it didn't used to. Or if in the case where we're interrupting a current call, you don't know who's calling there either. But no matter what, when I call somebody, I say, "This is Gloria," and start out rather than not saying anything. And it happened from an old boyfriend that I had broken up with. And he called me and I thought it was the new boyfriend. So you can imagine what my discussion was and my situation. I was so embarrassed. It was a nightmare. In fact, I felt so sorry for this guy. I married him. And that was the worst thing that ever happened to me. So if you're making a call, identify yourself. It's so quick and easy.
Yeah. And of course, we often undervalue mistakes and how much they're helpful in learning.
Oh,
We put a lot of stress on when people are competitively successful and how much they learn, but I've learned a hell of a lot more from just really dumb things that I've done or said. And so thank goodness for those, but I hope you're not permanently traumatized by that one moment in time.
no, not permanently traumatized, but I've never forgotten it.
In our field, we sometimes call this critical incident analysis, where at any given point, someone who's in a workplace or in a relationship or in a academic setting, there's one moment in time where something happens that just rivets itself into their brain and they can never let go of it. It's a defining moment. And it may have only taken 5 or 10 seconds sometimes, but it becomes the way in which they understand themselves or that situation. It is their one salient memory of that time. For me in kindergarten, I threw up on my kindergarten teacher. I think that's my salient memory of that. That's all I remember about kindergarten, but you can imagine why.
Oh,
I
man.
have one that probably every one of us can resonate with, as I think we're all grandparents, but and it doesn't have to be with grandchildren. It's just that I noticed something with a granddaughter that I have, or any one of my grandkids, and would have been true thinking back when I was a young person. And anyone who is a parent or grandparent, a boss, a beloved family friend that you deeply respect, asks you, "Do you want this?" In this case, I'm thinking about with my granddaughter, do you want these incredibly huge series of bookcases that I no longer wanted, I valued, paid a lot of money for, and assuming that she might really value it. And she did say yes. But in hindsight, they've moved again one more time, and I do not see those things in her house. And I realized that I could have done something differently, like, let me know if you want these. I have a few other people I can offer them to. Let me know if you'd like these.
Mhm.
And then one thing I did do right is I have never asked about that, or what did you ever do with those? I just,
Good for you.
bearing in mind never to put someone in that position again.
Yeah, well, it's always a matter of, thinking about the other person and being aware of that, and then thinking about yourself too, and trying to find a way where you're being respectful to both parties. And that's not always easy to do that.
Mhm.
That giving a gift to someone is giving them that gift and they can do with it what they want to do. I think we all know people who give you things that it's hard for them to give, and they want to know what you're going to do with it. if you're going to give it away, it's a real problem, especially with someone I know that they're not really freely giving that as a gift. They're just sort of lending it to you. Does that happen to others?
Mm,
Yeah, I've had people ask for things back and it's long been passed on.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah.
Midge, you had something that you were gonna talk about.
Well, it's really very, very trivial, but I remember it now, and it happened decades ago when we were in our first neighborhood, and the women started to get really gossipy and catty. And there was a conversation. Well, first of all, Tim and I always said we were best friends. And that's my deceased husband. We were always best friends. And so we were in a conversation with these women, and one of them said, oh, I'm not going to say the name in case by chance they would see this, but so-and-so is my best friend. And I didn't say, yeah, you know, Tim and I feel that way too. I didn't say anything. But then there was another conversation not too long after that. And it came up, and and as I was saying it, I knew that it would probably be a problem, but I said, oh yeah, Tim is my best friend. And the look on her face, her mouth literally dropped. She looked at me and like, are you kidding me? You copied me? That's what it was. And it made such an impression on me because I wasn't copying her. But I thought afterward, I should have never, ever said that. I don't know really why I did. You know, I was young and dumb, and
Mhm.
Yeah.
but
People's intentions are often misunderstood. And sometimes one of the most important things you can do is clarify what your intentions are. The other
Yeah.
thing that comes to mind, especially Gloria talking about gifts and things, one very important principle of communication is that all messages have both a content level and a relationship level. And so at the content level, we may just be talking about a blender, for God's sakes, or a set of silver tableware or something. It's part of somebody's estate. And you may think that the communication is about the blender or the tableware, but really there's a relationship level statement, a meta message. And if you sell that, for example, the meta message is that I don't care about you, or I'm not particularly grateful for something that I've received. And that's really the important part. It's what is the message about the message. And so it can be something very simple. And it's not the content that really is the big part of it. It's what it symbolizes to people. That's the real issue that is relevant and important.
Mhm.
It's really good. That's really good information. Bob, did you have anything that you wanted to share, an experience or words that get you in trouble?
Well, I have a habit of making smart aleck remarks when people are talking with me. And sometimes I'll do it even with strangers when they approach me, and they take what I'm saying seriously.
Mhm.
And so I really have to bite my lip and not say dumb things in front of people a lot of times.
Been
I
there,
think-
done that.
It seems like the being thoughtful or measured in your responses to people, you know, just thinking about what you're saying seems like that's a big part of it, and respectful and thinking about what they're feeling. But sometimes they just things come out you didn't intend to.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's like hitting the send
Ask
button
me.
on a email. You sometimes have to pause a little bit and just review what you were just saying before you open your mouth, because sometimes my filter is working well and sometimes not so much. And so it is important to think about what you're saying before you start spitting out words.
I think
Right.
that's true of relationships with your own kids. I tend to feel like I need to mother my adult children, and I really don't. And so they will tell me though. they will tell me that, Mom,
Yeah.
I
Well,
know.
in the academic world, we'd call this perceptual constancy, which is you're still seeing your 8-year-old daughter. You're seeing your 38-year-old daughter as your 8-year-old daughter. And it's difficult for you to see a different person out of that, given that the permanence of the memory you have of her as a child.
Yeah.
Don't they say that when your children come home, you treat them in a certain way and always do. And when they walk in that door, they're 13 or 8 or whatever age, and that never changes. That's the way you treat them. Is that something, Dave?
Oh, absolutely. And of course, the issue then becomes, how do you adapt to that other person as they continue to grow? And you'll always be their parent. That's a relationship that never ends, but the nature of the relationship absolutely has to change. And if you don't change, you're in big trouble. I like to think that I was a teeny bit better with our kids when they were teenagers than my wife was, but she was way better than I was when those kids were 4, 5, and 6 years old. And it was just a matter of being able to adapt to the place in life that they were at. I think that was important.
Yes, and you can, I've worked on that with grandchildren and other young people that have been important parts of my life. And it gets easier over time, and pretty soon if you look at them and think about them as an adult and actually make a practice of thinking of them as an adult over time, that gets easier.
Yeah.
Well, we've
And of
come
course, one
down
of the
to
nice-
about, go ahead, David. We have,
Okay, one of the nice things is they get to look at you as adults too, finally, and not just as parental figures. And I'm greatly appreciative of that, that they now can see me, my adult kids can see me as dad, but with all his warts and all his pluses and all his minuses, and at least know me as a person and not just as a parental figure.
Mhm.
yeah. David, you've just given us all kinds of things to think about, and the audience and viewers, I know, will appreciate this as well. Thank you, everyone. We've run out of time. Gloria and Midge and Bob, Nadia, and especially David, for all of your extra tips. Maybe we can stay out of trouble, huh? By choosing really good words. So with that, thank you, audience, for joining us here on Generations. We'll see you next time.